relative to the query of Senator Hontiveros, the committee received a letter from the Executive Secretary, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, and is the committee secretary in possession of the same? It is now flashed in the screen. There is a communication coming from the Executive Secretary dated August 30, and I cannot seem to read it, but the contents would probably can be summarized in his non-attendance, because he will be attending to some events that would require his presence, specifically the preparations for the state visits, among others. So there is a line in that communication explaining his non-attendance, Your Honor. So may I request the committee secretary to mark the letter of Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez as Exhibit B for the Office of the President to be numbered accordingly. So directed, Comsec.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Hontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Mr. Chair, even if the Executive Secretary is required to be present elsewhere to make preparations for state visits of the President, pwede naman po silang humarap sa pagtatanong ng Blue Ribbon via Zoom. And unfortunately, Mr. Chair, as I had intimated to the Chair before, this will be the third time that the Executive Secretary will not be making himself available to directly answer questions from the Blue Ribbon. And that being the case, Mr. Chair, at the proper time today, this morning, I will make a motion to subpoena the ES to make himself available, what should be an ordinary process for a member of the bureaucracy vis-a-vis Congress. For the record, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The committee notes the manifestation of the good senator. Are there other manifestations coming from my colleagues here before we proceed? And the right time probably, Senator Tiveros, would be in terms of the clock of the committee. Is it midday, after lunch, before lunch, or right now?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may proceed.
Mr. Chair, if we need to set the time there, siguro gagawin ko na po, Mr. Chair. If the Chair will allow, I formally move.
Unless Senator Hontiveros would continue to insist on her planned motion.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, palagay ko lang po no, na yung pinaka or isang pinaka magbibigay ng stamp of finality dito sa ating mga facts established ay kung finally humarap si ES Rodriguez sa Blue Ribbon para sumagot ng mga tanong. Kasi arguably sila yung pinaka-importanteng resource person para maklaro na itong buong kwento ng sugar fiasco. At habang hindi sila humaharap, pangatlong beses na ito, na hindi sila haharap para sumagot sa tanong, bitin yung buong kwento. So with all due respect, Mr. Chair, I will at this moment, therefore, formally move. Yes, Mr. Chair.
I was just informed through a whisper that there is now a communication being printed coming from Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez. So with the indulgence of Senator Hontiveros, pwede ba nating mahintay kung anong laman nun, kung ano yung ipiprint?
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
Ngayon lang daw po itong umaga. Siguro kung mahintay nating letter previously marked as an exhibit by this committee. a few minutes ago, the first letter. So this is a reiteration, Senator Ontiveros, if you will read the attached letter.
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. Mr. Chair, may I just remind our honorable committee and the good chair respectfully that my motion was to invite the ES here, or at the very least to appear before the Blue Ribbon via Zoom and to answer our questions, not to answer written questions. Bakit po meron tayong isang invited resource person na in effect, nagdidikta sa Blue Ribbon kung in what way siya sasagot ng mga tanong. His answers can be validated and cross-examined immediately by checking with the other resource persons who are, many of them also here in person. Kaya importanteng in person po humarap si ES or at the very least via Zoom. I'd just like to note dito po sa sulat ni ES Rodriguez sa chair that he says per instructions of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., I will not be able to attend the hearings of the above-mentioned committees. Concerning po ito, Mr. Chair, on what basis ini-instruct ni Presidente ang pinakamataas na opisyal ng bureaucracy na hindi dumalo sa pagdinig ng isang Senate committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee at that. And lastly, Mr. Chair, ito nga pong sinulat ni ES Rodriguez na the undersigned is willing to answer written inquiry. So again, bakit written lang ang pagsagot nila? Bakit hindi nila nirerespeto yung imbitasyon ng Blue Ribbon? Since the beginning of the Blue Ribbon na pinauunlakan ng imbitasyon ng mga resource persons. If this is the case, Mr. Chair, and with the indulgence of the Chair, may I therefore now proceed to formally move to subpoena the Executive Secretary, an extraordinary step simply to secure yung presensya nila or at least yung pagharap nila live via Zoom sa Blue Ribbon to once and for all, after 3 attempts on the part of the Honorable Committee, to invite his presence. I so move, Mr. Chair. Already started. So, yes, Mr. Valderrama. Could you repeat, please?
It was Mr. Serafica who said that, not me. But I was listening to the conversation.
You were listening to the conversation, and so?
And the president said 600,000, and Mr. Serafica said that might be too much, Mr. President, because the meeting season is about to open.
All right, so ito
Together
specifically,
with us
Mr.
was
Serafica. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Secretary.
Yes,
Together with us was
Mr. Valderrama, let me continue. What you are now saying is that you are affirming what Mr. Serafica just mentioned. But for the record, the statements coming from Mr. Serafica right now are culled from a new sworn statement which he just issued September 2, 2022. So all of these items were not part of his original testimony before this committee. So we now have a 26-page sworn statement putting in some details previously not divulged and coming up with some details that afterthought probably might not be the appropriate word, that would try to link some dots. So I still doubt again the veracity of the contents of all of this. So I remind you, Mr. Serafica, you're under oath, and this is again a sworn statement, perjury as a price. There are some details here that were not divulged during your first testimony, so I reserve my comment when we scrutinize the details of this document. You may proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, indeed, as the good chair said, former Administrator Serafica submitted this document September 2, so more than half a week ago. It is in the form of it is a supplemental affidavit. So for one, as one of the members of the Blue Ribbon, I would like to express my appreciation to former Administrator Serafica for submitting a formal legal document to the committee para mas matimbang namin at kung ano yung mga facts nitong buong kwentong ito. And with due respect also, the Executive Secretary also did not disclose the August 4 meeting in his initial presentation to the Blue Ribbon committee. Wala dun sa record ni ES saying na nasa August 4 meeting si Presidente. And lastly, on this particular point, Mr. Chair, for the record, two resource persons have confirmed so far that volume of 600,000 metric tons, but it was advised at that meeting by the SRA, particularly by former Administrator Serafica, that might be too big a volume, Mr. Chair. So just to return momentarily to former Admin Serafica, I hope, however, former board member Valderrama, you will stay online with the committee. Former Administrator Serafica, so the big question, sir, why this messy fiasco kahit wala naman palang objection sa proposal ng 300,000 metric tons? Batay sa rekomendasyon ng mga stakeholders, wala namang objections dun sa August 4 meeting. So bakit nagkagulo-gulo, naging fiasco pa ito? And despite the instruction to import given by the President, dahil sabi nila mag-draft kayo ng importation plan, na ibig sabihin sa SRA, mag-draft kayo ng importation program, na ibig sabihin mag-draft kayo ng sugar order. So I suppose, Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, ito nga po yung mga tanong na kailangan pang dagdag na sagutin ni Executive Secretary. And just a brief manifestation, Mr. Chair, in my last 10 minutes, no? In my last minute, I guess, Mr. Chair. In my last 30 seconds, Mr. Chair. Even if we are disappointed that the Executive Secretary hasn't shown up yet, we're very happy that the committee will go that extra mile by subpoenaing him to appear. I believe, with all due respect, we now hold information on at least 3 things, at baka ito na po siguro ang itinatago ni ES Rodriguez. Una, na nagkaroon pala ng pangalawang pulong sa araw ng August 4 sa hapon, na sinadya nang hindi binanggit sa binasa niyang salaysay sa atin dito sa Blue Ribbon Committee. Pangalawa, sa pulong na iyon, yung pangalawang pulong noong August 4, bago isinapinal at pirmahan ang Sugar Order number 4, kung saan naroon sina Presidente, Executive Secretary, dating Board Member Valderrama at dating Administrator Serafica, ay muling iginiit ni Pangulo na kailangang madaliin na ang importasyon ng asukal. At pangatlo, sa inilihim na pulong na ito ay ipinaliwanag pala ng SRA kay Presidente na sa ilalabas na import plan or import program o sugar order ay 300,000 metric tons lamang ang kailangan sa halip na 600,000 metric tons na naunang inakala ni Presidente sa August 4 na pulong na ito. So inaasahan po natin, Mr. Chair, na isusulat na report ng Blue Ribbon Committee ay hindi sana makaligtaan ang itinagong impormasyong ito ni Executive Secretary. Kasalanan po nila kung hanggang sa araw na ito, kailangan pang magsabina po tayo na para harapin ang mga tanong at mga bagong naisiwalat sa hearing na ito ng Blue Ribbon Committee. Maraming salamat po sa resource persons at Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Contiveros. Before we allow Senator Padilla, I think he's not here, and then followed by Senator Ejercito, with the indulgence of Senator Ejercito, who will be next in line. I have a question coming from the supplemental affidavit of Mr. Serafica. Apparently, this supplemental affidavit that we have now answered some queries brought about by the testimonies of various resource persons, specifically Mr. Manuel Lamata, who is here, I think. Yes. Can you be seated, sir? I think you just came from an executive checkup. Are you okay now? Yes. In Mr. Serafica's second affidavit, executed September 2, he alleged on, if he can be shown a copy, Comsec, can we show number 29, page 11, page 11 of the supplemental affidavit? Can we show it to Mr. Lamata? And I'd like to quote this. Number 29, more so, there is no truth to the allegation of Mr. Lamata that it was made to appear that 300,000 metric tons was already approved by the President so as to render the group with no other choice but to agree. The said recommendation only came during the August 4, 2022 meeting, and all recommendations of the stakeholders were in. It is clear from the transcript of the July 29, 2022 meeting with the stakeholders that there was no mention to that effect. Are you aware of this? You're not aware of the supplemental affidavit, but there is now a concrete rebuttal of what you said, that you lied before the committee. That is what Mr. Serapica is saying, that there is no truth to your allegation, Mr. Lamata. Can you expound on this? Sino ba nagsasabi ng totoo?
Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, sir. Well, my best friend is saying a lie.
Your best friend?
Mr. Serapica po.
So, Mr. Serapica is lying.
Yes po.
So, in effect, he is committing perjury here. So, what made you declare that he is lying?
Okay, pinakalat nila po, especially Mr. Serapica, to the other federations, that there is a shortage. Tatlong phrases yun eh. Kakapos na, kakulang na, wala na. Wala nang asukal. Tapos na. By August, sabi niya, there will be no more sugar. So there is a national emergency. Those were his words. And he asked all of us stakeholders to submit a resolution, which I signed. I agreed to the 300,000 metric ton kasi sabi niya, orders ni Presidente to appease the very high rising prices of retail.
The date when you signed was when?
I cannot recall anymore, sir, but the resolution, I have it in my office and I'll give you a copy po.
Please do that. We'll have that part of the records of this hearing.
Yes,
so, you may continue.
So I signed the resolution, sent it to them that our group, United Sugar Federation, is agreeable for a 300,000 metric tons refined. Eh yung lumabas po, ang SO, kalahati, 150,000 is raw, 150,000 refined. I never signed up for that. Yung sabi ko, all refined. Bakit may raw?
Sinasabi po niya kanina 600,000 na. Narinig niyo ba yung
Ay,
figures
never
na?
po. Bago lang yan. Bagong imagination niya naman yan.
So ngayon lang yung 600,000?
Yes po.
Okay.
We never heard that.
So, what about the online meeting?
Never heard of that neither po.
So, Mr. Serapica is lying?
I'm very sure she
Not
is.
just once?
Yes po.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay, so pag naglabas na yung sugar order number 4, yun na, kalahati na. Eh, sabi namin, hindi pwede yan. 150,000 of raw, umimpisa na 6 na sugar mills were starting to fire up. We were already harvesting. So, pagdating yan, November, December, sabi, patay na naman yung presyo ng mga planters. Babagsak yun. So, sino naman kumita doon? Ayun. Mga miller traders po na may mga refineries. That was intended for them. So, nagkokonsabo yan po si Mr. Serapica, yung miller trader refiner, at saka yung mga retailers.
So again, for the record, Mr. Lamata, was there a July 29, 2022 meeting with the stakeholders? As far as your knowledge is concerned, as far as you're aware of, was there a meeting convened?
I'm not very sure of that, sir. Not very sure. Whether it was Zoom or what, I'm not sure.
So there could have been a meeting.
There could be, but yung sa akin na po na sigurado,
You were not invited.
definitely, best friend ko yan eh.
And you were invited before.
Before,
SO
before him, yes,
SO3.
always.
But for SO4, you were not invited.
No pa.
Because of?
He is my best friend.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Ontiveros?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief interjection. The stakeholders meeting on July 29 was via Zoom, and there is a recording. So maybe the SRA should provide a copy to the Blue Ribbon Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.